Hey there, entrepreneur. Welcome back to the Scale to Sell podcast. We're excited to have you back for episode number 37. What's next? Life after selling your business, even if you aren't ready to exit yet. Now, before you tune me out because you're like, I'm years away from wanting to exit, let me just encourage you, right? The things that we're going to talk about today are important to have even now, whatever stage of business you're at, because like we say, we want to scale with the end in mind. What are we hoping to achieve, and how do we know that we're going to be ready for that exit when it's the right time? For personally, professionally, financially, all of those considerations. And so, again, one of our goals is to help business owners win at work and life. We say that often. And for us, that means strategically helping you grow your business and exit on your terms, while at the same time wanting to help you win at life outside of work and think through some of those things. Steve, we've talked about a number of stats that we keep coming back to as kind of the benchmarks in our heads of where the business industry is at in terms of the success of selling a business. And one of the stats that just keeps coming up in our minds and why we're doing what we're doing is the stat that shows that 70% of business owners who actually successfully sell their business are unhappy a year later because of how it went down. They weren't really ready to exit, either personally, professionally, financially, in a way that's made this next chapter of their life not what they really dreamed it would be.
Right. Sometimes it's financially that goes in that number. I think the actual number I saw was 76% are unsatisfied after a year. And so even if you get what you consider a big liquidity event, let's say you get $10 million, but you're used to making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And after you pay taxes and probably pay some kind of fee for the person that helped you sell the business and the lawyers and all that, let's say you walk away with $8 million just for kicks. Well, unless you got a whole lot of other investments, which is not always the case, then one, you could be unhappy because you thought it was a windfall. You thought it was the biggest chunk of money you've ever gotten, but it's not enough because you didn't have a plan. So you could be unhappy because you realize, I made a financial mistake.
Yeah.
I got out too early. But the other thing that people really discount, and it's really simple, is what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So if you have an internal sell, like we talked about the last episode, if you have an internal sell and you're going to, they're going to pay you out, or your kid's going to pay you out over time or whatever, you still have a lien on that business. You can go around and show up and stick your head in the door, and maybe that keeps you busy and out of the house for a while. But beyond that, if you're going to do either that sell or an outright exit, and they're going to keep you around for 6 months a year, to a transition period, which is not uncommon. But what are you going to do when that is done? What is going to be happening with this 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week that you've been putting in for decades? What are you going to do with your time? It sounds so simple, but I've seen, my dad wasn't a business owner. He was a police officer. And when he retired too young at 59. He retired because somebody, I think, made him mad or whatever one day. And he just had his 30 years in. So he retired, and he drove my mom nuts. And I bought a business just to get him out of the house, right? Because he didn't have a plan. He just retired unexpectedly one day, brought his stuff home, and there he was. But you as the business owner, it's kind of even worse because your business is your life.
Yeah.
It becomes like one of your kids. And if it's not there anymore, then you go through a withdrawal period of missing it. Is kind of your identity. And so between the time factor and your identity, well, I used to own this business over here. I used to. And after a while, that sounds kind of, old, corny, whatever it might be. And so how many rounds of golf can you play a week? How much fishing can you do? We live in Virginia. And unless you we really don't have ice on the water around here. But, most of the fishermen I know want to go out when it's warmer, golfing when it's above at least 50. And so what are you going to do with your time? You might get a plan. You have to have a plan. If you're married, it will cause undue stress on your relationships, and you will drive yourself nuts. And if you don't have a plan to do something.
Well, and like you were saying, this kind of gets to one of our first considerations here of thinking through the emotional roller coaster of selling because like you were saying, for most business owners, that was their identity. If someone, comes up to you and you're like, oh, tell me about yourself, what's the first thing you probably say?
Well, I'm the president of, or I'm the owner of, or the founder of.
I own my own business. This is what we do, right? Like that is right there connected with like who you are. And there's not necessarily something wrong with thinking along those ways, but we are people beyond our businesses. And sometimes business owners, because they spend so much time, because they have so much invested in that business, that's where a lot of their time and effort and energy and identity is wrapped up in. But beyond that, who are you? Like, what do you do? What do you like to spend time doing?
You're rebranding yourself. You got to kind of rebrand yourself, whether it's helping out. I've seen a lot of people, their grandkids are of the age where they want to spend time with granddaddy or grandma.
Yeah.
And that's a thing. Or it's helping out in the church or charities or this travel. But you got to have it at least, I'd say plan out at least the first 6 months. And develop something that you're going to be passionate. Maybe it's taking a class. Maybe it's developing a hobby or whatever it might be. Fixing up the house. I've got one client that sold out of his business recently at the end of last year. And he's fixing up, I think, both his primary house and their secondary house. And he goes, I'm going to be busy for a while. But he's got strategies laid out. He knew these things. He was financially ready, both personally and business-wise. And anyway, and he had a game plan, and he's content and happy. All right, he's not dreading. There's no, at least here we are, a few months in, and he doesn't have any regrets from what I've heard anyway.
So just for the record, Steve's like nailing the order of this list, and he's not even reading off of it. So number 2 was what to do in the months after the sale, and what I love about that example is one, it's a project for him to do in the meantime that he's going to enjoy being a part of, but it's also buying him some time. He's able to figure out what it is that he likes outside of the business while still keeping himself occupied. Like, to go back to the first, I call them Nana and Pawpaw, to that example, like to think that you're a business owner who spent however many hours a week doing that job, and then you step away and you suddenly have the 40, 50, whatever hours that are now free, and that you're just going to sit around. Like, I don't know many business owners that are like sit around and do nothing type people.
We're going to move to Tennessee. We're going to move to the beach. We're going to move somewhere. That's what are you going to do when you sell the business? We're going to move here. We're going to do this.
Okay, what are you going to do?
We're going to retire. We're going to retire. I'm just burnt out, Steve. We're just going to retire. That's not a plan. That's not a plan. That'll wear off really quickly, and then you go, dag, these days are long. Yeah. Where they used to fly by when you're busy, now go, wow, it's only 9 o'clock in the morning here. What do I do with the rest of the day?
I've already seen all the reruns of Murder, She Wrote. Like
Gunsmoke and everything else, right?
So, but it does kind of point out, in my mind, it raises the question about all of the studies that we see about mental health, right? About people who just stop doing things, who stop keeping their mind and body engaged and active and all of those things. If you don't have a plan, like, it's not just impacting, how you spend the next chapter of your life and the time and the financial concerns, which we'll get to in just a little bit, but thinking about like what that means for your health ongoing. It's a big impact to not have outlets for your creativeness, for your energy, for those sorts of things.
Depression sets in sometimes,
For sure.
And so, but just have a game plan. It's pretty simple. Have a game plan of something you want to do. And it can't be just one thing, because again, I don't care how much you love golf or fishing, you're not going to do it every day of the week.
Yeah.
Right.
So the next consideration is the financial planning for your post-exit life and what that means for the long term of your wealth and the legacy that you're trying to leave. If you don't have an idea of what you're going to want to do, even now, like if you're still working and you don't necessarily see the exit in the short term per se, like having these outside of work things is really important, right? We talk about work and life. We want you to win at both. But what role do your finances play in those sorts of things, right? It's going to vary depending on what you're trying to do. If you're the wanting to be the world traveler type and go on the cruises, which I I'm right in that boat, by the way.
Yeah.
So like those sorts of things, if that's what you're going to do, or if you've got this dream or that dream, like that needs to be factored in.
You have to have a plan
to your financial plan.
And we've used this example before. If somebody's working a job and they're making $100,000, $200,000, let's say they're making the same thing in a job as you're paying yourself in paycheck income from the business. We all know most business owners take dividends, and the business pays for the car, and sometimes this, that, and whatever. So a realistic understanding of what you really need. It's different. It's just different. And to be able to maintain that lifestyle, retirement, I tell individuals, not just business owners, individuals, you could be retired and not want to work anymore, but if you don't have any money to maintain your lifestyle, what good is that?
Yeah.
Right. And it's extra to, I think, of business owners, because if you've worked a business for 20 or 30 years and you look at and add up all the hours, that's like you worked in a job for 50 or 60 because of the most of the time, the additional hours. 60, 70-hour weeks are not uncommon with many people. And you get a cruise control, and typically you start phasing back a little bit if you got a well-run business. And so, but get your financial house in order. Most of us have the bulk of our net worth and we're banking on that business selling. It's not true of everybody. I've got business owners that have been intentional about separating, harvesting, and putting other money aside, myself now included, but for years, decades even, it all went into the business. New equipment, warehouses, whatever, inventory and other businesses, and the financial services business, staff, offices, marketing. But I was able eventually to get it going and was able to harvest some money away. But again, we've said it many times, personal assets, how much can you harvest from the business in order to put together enough money? And then are you realistic? If you need 100,000, 200,000, whatever the number is, are those assets going to throw off of that income? That's where a financial advisor comes in, because that's what they do. You deal with it once, maybe twice. They deal with it, if they're anybody like me, hundreds or thousands of times a year. So we've been there, done that.
Well, I think it goes back to a phrase that you use a lot, and that retirement isn't about an age, it's about an income. A lot of people are thinking, well, I'm 59, or well, I'm 65, or whatever the case may be. But they haven't thought about what the income need actually is. And the same thing's true with the business owner. And in many ways, you've got some more complications in that plan to think about as you're trying to make sure you've got what you need.
100%. So they talk about real estate. You hear about location, location, location. I talk about retirement. It doesn't matter how big a bucket of money you got, because we've seen professional athletes, lottery winners come into millions, tens of millions of dollars and end up bankrupt. It's all about income, income, income.
The old, it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
What do you have an income strategy, net of taxes, inflation adjusted, to last as long as you do, to allow you to maintain that lifestyle?
I think of one example from one of the SEPA certified exit planners that shared it with us, about a couple that he was working with and asking him kind of these sorts of questions. And he challenged them to do the research, because they were musically inclined. They had a love for music and wanted to encourage that in kind of the next chapter of their life. They wanted to start a music conservatory. And the questions were, how much would it cost to do that, right? That was their passion project.
Yep.
And they misjudged what that was going to be like, and what type of investment they were going to need to make to have that kind of lasting impact. So it was a project that they loved, but they needed to take the time to better reflect on what that was really going to look like, what that was really going to cost going forward, to really make that next chapter successful.
As to whether you can keep affording it, no doubt about it. So
the last thing that we're going to talk about is just kind of a reminder, and really a recap of some of the things that we've been talking about. But consider how you're going to reinvest, give back, or start something new, like what we were just sharing. I see a number of people who give their time, give their effort, money, energy, whatever, to, like you were saying, the church, or to their grandkids' school, helping out, and so they can kind of be a part of their family in that way. But thinking through those things and being proactive and planning what this next chapter looks like is crucial. If it's going to be a success, if you're going to enjoy your exit and it be the right type of plan for you, you're going to have to think through these things sooner now rather than later, when you become one of the 76% of people who's frustrated by the way that they exited.
You can always, there's examples of people exit from one business, take a windfall of money, cash out, and start another one.
Yep.
But you have to do that right. You're older now than you were before. You've got the experiences, but are you sure you're doing the right thing? Because I've seen people make mistakes there, and this windfall of money that they pulled out of this one business was, wasted away or just didn't work out, and came back, and now they're in their 60s, 70s, and now they're not as well off as they could have been. So you want to make sure you're working with people that can keep you from making mistakes, financial mistakes.
Absolutely. So for us, this is where, having an understanding, we've talked a lot about the financial side of this because of the impact that it has on that next stage of life. If you do not have an up-to-date and accurate view of the value of your company, you need to get one. We will say it for as long as we possibly can, that you need to know the value, you can grow the value, you can get the value that you need for the plans that you're trying to make about the future, about what you're wanting your life to look like beyond work. And if you don't have an updated estimate of value, go to scaletosell.com/value, fill out the quick form, get in touch with our team. We'd love to be able to connect you with our team that does the free valuations just for you, for being a listener of our show, right? Normally costs anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000
or more.
Free because of your connection with Scale to Sell. Again, scaletosell.com/value, or click the link in the show notes below. Go there, fill it out, get some clarity on what your business is worth and on what that could mean for the next chapter of your life, even if you're not ready to sell just yet. If you're looking to grow, you still got to know your value. Know your value, grow your value. So either way, scaletosell.com/value. Until next time, keep scaling.
Thank you for listening to Scale to Sell with Adam Burton and Steve Burton. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.scaletosell.com or give us a call at 757-313-4080. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Scale to Sell. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing, tax, legal, or other advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified professionals with any questions you may have regarding your personal or professional plans. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome.